Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did. So let's get started. Number 5 was Don't Worry Darling, making $3.5 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $38 million and a worldwide total of $69 million. So to start things off with the positives, it held better than last weekend, dipping just 49%, which is, a decent enough hold in your third weekend. And also this weekend pushed it over the film's initial budget of $35 million domestically, and it's about to cross the doubling point of that worldwide, as it just needs $1 million more, which it's definitely going to make in maybe even a couple of hours or so. In order to reach the doubling point. So at the very least, it reached the doubling point worldwide, and it wasn't a humongous failure that many thought it would be, but this is still a pretty underwhelming performance for the film. The fact that the word of mouth is not helping it out in the way it should have, especially with how much buzz there was for this movie prior to its release, shows how audiences aren't really jiving with this movie all that well. And it looks like, once again, it is up to Dwayne Johnson to save Warner Brothers, as this is definitely not what the studio wanted this movie to perform at all, and it's looking like a pretty big disappointment, even with it doubling its budget, and especially now that it's about to leave the top 5. But at the very least, it did not leave the top 5 as a failure. Again, it's about to reach the doubling point worldwide, so at least there's that. It could have done worse, but it also could have done a lot better. Number 4 was The Woman King, making $5.1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $54 million and a worldwide total of $64 million. So the movie is still doing really strong right now. It had a very solid hold of 24% in its 4th weekend. Quite impressive, if I do say so myself. It has also surpassed its $50 million budget domestically. Again, really good sign of how it's doing domestically. And it seems like it's starting to open in various international countries. It just needs to open a bit more to help it out, as it is now just roughly 40 million away from the doubling point of 100 million, which if it gets to the international countries soon and it does really strong in those countries, then I think it's definitely going to get to that milestone for sure. Because while yes, it is still doing strong, it is a sleeper hit thus far, and it still did a lot better than many people thought it would. Domestically, it's starting to slow down quite a bit right now. It's still holding well. It's quite the surprise, and I'm not saying it's failing by any means, but I do think this is going to be the point where the film slows down a bit, the hype dies down a bit, and we slowly see it leave the top 5. So, which sucks, but at least the movie was able to get to surpassing its $50 million budget, and well, I do think it's still going to be in the top 5 for at least a couple more weeks. This isn't like the end of The Woman King, at least in my opinion. I just think that it really needs the help of the international box office in getting to that doubling point, because we are definitely seeing it start to slow down. The hype and word of mouth is slowing down quite a bit, and we might see it out of the top 5 sooner than we thought. But this is still a pretty solid performance overall. One of the bigger surprises in the past couple months at the box office, and I don't think anyone's too hurt or saddened by this box office performance of The Woman King. Number 3 was Amsterdam, opening with $6.4 million domestically and $10 million worldwide. So while I wasn't expecting at the very least decent numbers for this movie, even I was a little bit surprised by how bad this movie did. The film costed $80 million and it made like a 16th of that on its opening weekend. This movie is definitely in a disastrous place right now. It is going to need all the help it can in order to getting to half of that, maybe even at least 25% of that. I felt there was just nothing going to help this movie out. Even with a much more prominent marketing campaign for a film from 20th Century Fox, it wasn't enough to get the word out as much as I thought it would. The buzz was lacking, and apparently the movie's not very good, as reviews are terrible. Even audiences who actually went to see this movie did not care too much about it. It received a B- cinema score, and I wouldn't be too surprised to see this movie turn out like Don't Worry Darling, but obviously a little bit worse. I may seem a bit too harsh on this movie, I know, but given that the director is kind of a terrible person, I can't feel too bad, I guess. This is still a pretty surprisingly bad opening weekend, but I wasn't expecting it to do good either, so... Number 2 was Lyle Crocodile, opening with $11 million domestically, and that total stays the same worldwide, as well. It has been released in some international countries. The totals it got in those countries weren't enough to boost it by any means. So yeah, this was, in my opinion, an even shocking turnout for this than Amsterdam, because when going into Amsterdam, I had low expectations, but if you remember last weekend, I had actual high hopes and promising expectations for how this movie would turn out, given all the benefits it had. The marketing was pretty solid, and the fact that there were barely any family films out. I thought families would be more than eager to go check this out, but clearly that was not the case here. So what happened? Well, I think it boils down to pretty much two things. One is that Lyle Crocodile, even if it was a bestseller at the time, is not as big of a household name as I think Sony thought. I barely know anyone who's heard of this book, and compared to other famous book characters who got movies based off of them, I don't think this book reaches the same levels of notoriety as something like Peter Rabbit, Paddington, or Clifford the Big Red Dog. And another thing that held this movie back was that the movie looked stupid. I'm sorry to say, but if you watch my review, you know that I had the lowest of expectations going into that movie, and I think that a lot of other people shared my sentiments, as I don't think a lot of families were impressed by the trailers and were a bit turned off by how ridiculous the movie looked, which, if you are too ridiculous for kids, your target audience being young children, then that's when you know you screwed up. So yeah, this is a pretty disappointing opening, especially given the fact that the movie costed $50 million to make. It's going to need a lot of help in order to reaching that total, at the very least worldwide. However, there is a silver lining here, and that is people are actually really liking this movie. Critics gave it decent reviews, and it received an A- cinema score, which is, it could have been better, but this is still a pretty solid rating for a family film on Cinema Score. And time again, we have been proven how family films are the kings of legs and hold. Even if they underperform, they can have strong legs. Like DC League of Super Pets had a pretty disappointing opening to many, and that film was able to get to the doubling point worldwide. In fact, it's about to surpass 200 million worldwide. I mean, it certainly got to that point way longer than it should have, in my opinion, but it was still able to become a box office success. And if anything else, if word of mouth does help this movie out in any way, shape, or form, I can see this movie surprising people and beating certain expectations. I'm not sure if it's going to double the budget, because again, it's struggling a bit right now, but given how families and general audiences seem to like this a lot better than I thought they would, and the fact that this will be the only family film playing in theaters until Strange World comes out in Thanksgiving, I think there's still potential here. So the story is definitely not over for Lyle Crocodile. I still have hopes for its legs, but as far as this opening weekend goes, this is a pretty underwhelming opening, and I think it's going to need a lot of help. And finally, let's end the video off with the number one movie of the weekend, which was once again Smile, making $18 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $50 million and a worldwide total of $92 million. Folks, we talk a lot about overperformers, overachievers, movies that do the unexpected and defy all expectations prior to their release, but I don't think anyone saw how well that Smile was going to do, because this is unbelievable that a horror movie, an original horror film about creepy smiling faces, in its second weekend would only drop 18%, and let alone make $18 million. Believe me, folks, the irony is not lost on me there. But regardless, this is an incredible hold. It would be an incredible hold for your average movie, but for a horror movie, which the genre has been known to have catastrophic drop-offs in its second weekend, to dip less than 20% is outstanding. Word of mouth is clearly helping this movie out. People are in the spooky spirit of Halloween and are telling everyone they know to go check this out. Clearly the B- cinema score was nothing to worry about, and this movie is just becoming an even bigger hit. It has already doubled its budget, and it's already surpassed the $50 million milestone domestically, but now it has a shot. I don't even think a shot. It has a definitive chance of getting over $100 million worldwide. I wasn't expecting this movie to do so, and I don't believe any of you were expecting it to do that either. And the fact that it's about to happen is outstanding. It might even get to that total domestically, given how well it's doing right now. So overall, Smile is just an incredible win right now. People are loving it. Word of mouth is strong, and it's doing incredibly well for its budget. It will be interesting to see how it does this weekend when it goes up against a new big horror movie. More on that in a couple minutes. But given how strong it's doing as of late, I think it might put up a good fight against the new horror film. But obviously, this will be another story for another day. But as far as this weekend goes, man, oh man, this is an outstanding performance for Smile, and I look forward to seeing where it goes from here. Job well done. And those were the top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we've got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And this weekend we only have one new major wide release, that being Halloween Ends. And in all honesty, they probably should have just called it Hallow Ends. Like, come on, it was right there, people. But regardless, I do think we're going to see one of the bigger openings for a horror film, given that it is a Halloween movie and we are getting the festive spirit of the holiday, and I think this movie will do that just fine. It's scary, and scary movies have certainly been doing a lot better than what many would have expected this to, even with this movie releasing on Peacock simultaneously as well as it releasing in theaters, which is a pretty strange decision. I guess it worked so well the first time, they might as well do it the second time. I think this movie is still going to have a pretty solid opening weekend for the type of genre it is. However, what is holding it back for me per se is the reception of the last movie. People did not like that last Halloween movie, and that is ever so evident by reviews, ratings, and especially the box office. It dipped over 70% twice in its theatrical run while it was in the top 5. The last time it was because Halloween was over, so that was to be expected. but the first time it dipped over was in its second weekend. Word of mouth did not help that out, and I think it kind of soured the taste for many people, and it kind of brought the hype for this new film down a bit. I don't think it's gonna flat out bomb or disappoint. I mean, it's a horror movie that cost $20 million to make. I don't think it'll be that hard to double the budget here, especially with it being Halloween. But I wouldn't be surprised to see this movie make the least out of this new Halloween trilogy, given the reception of the last film and the buzz being a bit more lukewarm for this new entry here. But I still think it's got a shot at making a decent opening weekend this weekend for sure. But we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied? Unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.